Okay, so this particular stabilizer, it's a U-shaped object, as you can see. There's a screw underneath there that screws into the bottom of the camera where the tripod would normally attach, and it holds it tight to the U-shaped object stabilizer. There will be plenty of these to buy on eBay or Amazon. This is by a particular company called X-Gloxy. I've never heard of the name myself, but it's spelled X-G-L-O-X-Y, X-Gloxy. And as I say, it holds the camera steady onto the bottom there where the tripod would go, and then it's just a question of using your hands and your knees as you walk along to steady the camera. So as I move along, soft knees, as it was with so many of these stabilizers, soft knees and even soft wrist and fingers there. I'm not holding it tight, I'm just letting it sit on the fingers and move along, and then hoping that the shake will sort of work itself out from, you know, my body movement and my damping as I move along. The advantage of this kind of thing is that it's very easy to go down low. I can go right down to the ground and get stones and rocks and that sort of thing, or down to ankles and feet and that sort of thing, and I can move it up again. I can move up someone's body or up a you know, an object or a chair or whatever it is, and then of course move from side to side, which is straightforward, of course. Now, once you start to go fast, you've just got to do the same thing, but you're going to have to keep those knees nice and soft. It's going to shake a lot more when you go faster, of course, but if you go along at a smooth, even pace, then it does the basic job. Okay, so that's the X-Gloxy. It's a generic U-shaped camera stabilizer, and very basic in price, because there's not much to it. It's very basic. It does have a shoe on the top. I guess that's for putting your camera on or such, you know, and such, anything that goes onto the shoe. It's a cold shoe, so there's no electric supply there. So for microphones and that sort of thing, it may not be suitable. But anything that will sit on the top there that doesn't need power, that would be fine. Okay, so this is the X-Gloxy C-shaped or U-shaped stabilizer. It's handheld, and here we are. You can see as I just stand here still, it's slightly moving because my hand is slightly moving. As I walk along, I've got to keep my knees soft and my hips soft and my hand and arm soft, just to try and minimize the sway and the jogging. Now, that's fine. If I go quickly, I'm now speeding up a little bit, you can see that the jogging's a little bit worse, and it becomes even more important to use your knees and your hips just to dampen the movements. So if we stop now, you can see that one of the major advantages of this particular one is that because it's handheld, I can lift up to about shoulder height nicely. That's okay, but the great advantage is I can go right down to the ground with a mouse's or you know, a dog's eye view, so I can go right down and you know, concentrate on these very expensive shoes, and then move up the object or the person, and to make a big reveal or whatever it is that's happening. Okay, so that's the X-Gloxy C-shape or U-shape hand stabilizer. Okay. Now this stabilizer is by a company called Beike, B-E-I-K-E, and you can see it's attached to my body, or well, it's not attached, it's just sort of resting on my body. It has a circular gearing system here so that I can widen this for if I have a bigger body or a smaller body. It's supported by my chest here and at the back there, so it's supported. So what that means is that I can take my hands off it and talk and adjust the camera and so on. Even as I'm walking along, I could adjust the camera and do that sort of thing. Now this is actually sticking a fair distance away from my body, and I've got no other way of supporting it. I can support it with my hand somewhat, but now soft knees becomes really important because the end of the camera, you can see there's quite a lot of travel there. So as I go along, the knees are going to be very important. So the advantage of this one, I've got a little bit of extra height because it's slightly above head height. Bit difficult to go down low, again I'd have to bend my knees. But the main advantage I can see really is that I can use it hands-free as it falls off. I can actually just take my hands away and stand like this. So it means I get a bit of a rest perhaps from my arm, so perhaps I could use it for longer than perhaps some of the other ones which take a lot of support. So my body is supporting the camera, so all I'm really doing is just sort of steadying it so that it doesn't sort of drift away, or so that my body movement doesn't you know, knock the camera off balance and so on. At the front there I've got an extra bit attached to another extra bit, and then the mounting itself is here. So it's sticking a fair distance away from my body. Okay, so this is the beaky, the support that's supported by the chest and the back at the same time, with the extensions on the top. Now, as I walk along, because it's a long way from my body and I've only really got one hand to support it with, there's a fair amount of travel as I'm walking along. Now on my little screen here I've got with my camera, it doesn't look too bad, but again, body has to do the main stabilising, soft knees, and being mindful all the time of the movements as I go. Okay, again, as with the other one, if I go down, I'm creating an angle because I'm not actually going down. And if I want to go down low, I'm actually going to have to kneel down and actually kneel so as to get that lower angle. And the limit being about 2.5 feet from the ground, unless I want to bend forward, and then I get that, as I say, the angled view. So if I come, again, side to side is fine. And the advantage is I can actually let go of the whole mechanism, as I am doing now. You can't see that, but if I let go of the whole mechanism, it just sits there. So that can be comfortable for long shoots. Next stabilizer is the monopod, which is mono, which just means one. You've got one leg as opposed to a tripod with 3 legs. It extends in the way that you'd expect a tripod to do, which means you get a certain height. Now, whether it stabilizes it is debatable, because it doesn't really stabilize anything. It's really a tripod that doesn't have much foot space. So if you're in crowded circumstances, or in a closed circumstance or space, then it's easier. It's got a smaller footprint. In fact, it just sits there on the ground there, as opposed to splaying out for its balance, which a tripod would do. It means that I can carry the camera without actually touching the camera. I don't know if that's an advantage or not really, but on some circumstances it possibly could be, especially as you can then you have a free hand to be able to control the controls and mechanisms of the camera. Once you've stood in a set position, you can swivel nicely, and of course it stays the right height the whole time round. But a trick I saw on YouTube one time is where the camera goes forward onto an object or onto a person lying down, or whatever that is, and then you can swivel that up. Of course you can do this with a tripod as well, but it's particularly easy with the monopod. And as you do that, if you change the focus as you go down, then the object that you're focusing on will stay in focus, but will change relative to the background. That may become more blurred or not. I haven't extended the legs, so I'm really just holding it. It's really an extension of the camera. As I walk along, I've got my knees, hips, arm and hand to steady. Now I can use both hands on the selfie stick, but again, it's a bit erratic, I would say. And there's a limit to how fast I can walk, because it's quite unforgiving, the selfie stick, when I'm moving. It's really just an extension of the camera in terms of being a handle. Now if I lower the legs, like that, makes a bit of a noise there. Okay, so I'm now on the stick itself, supported by the ground, and I can just keep it steady like that. It's great for swiveling. I can keep it on an even level there, and the ground is doing all the supporting. Again, I can go forward, right down to the ground, and then back up. But of course that changes the angle because I'm swiveling on the foot itself as it's planted in the ground. And so that's the selfie stick. Again, it doesn't have much of a footprint because there's no legs splayed out, which is handy. But its main goal is to just stand still in one place, possibly swivel from side to side. Okay, so this is the Hague Mini Motion Cam. Hague as in Holland, I think. Hague's in Holland, isn't it? Hague, and it's the minicam. It's you can see it's a kind of engineering contraption here. It's kind of a U shape, and it has this kind of beehive type handle here, which is good grip, and some balances here just under the camera there, and some counterweights at the bottom there, which allows to balance. Now it looks stable at the moment, which is fine, but of course behind the scenes it took 10-15 minutes to play around with this until it was just right. Otherwise it tends to list forward, you know, go too far backwards, or from side to side. So it really does take some setting up, unlike all the other stabilizers which you just attach and away you go. Now as I move along here, again, as with all of the stabilizers so far, you've got to use your body as part of the stabilizing process. So knees soft, hands soft. Now you can see it drifting around a bit. Again, balance is so critical. So I would say of all the ones we've used, this is the least easy, but again, there are advantages. You can go down low. It does have a nice lazy kind of stabilizing effect as you move around. It is a value, but it's not my personal favorite. Again, you've got to hold it. If you stop filming, you've still got to hold it. There's no resting position like the other one that was a shoulder harness. And you would need to balance this quite precisely for each camera that goes on it. Okay, so Kevin's going to back away from the camera, and we're going to see the footage from the balanced stabilizer that we're using at the moment. Okay, let's just walk along there. Now, as I said earlier, as I'm walking, I'm using my knees to balance myself. You can see a kind of lazy swaying of the thing because it's actually on a balance as I go along. You can see it's spun there. I'm not doing anything with my hands. The actual stabilizer itself is drifting a little from left to right. Okay, and then if I stand still, then there's a gentle swaying, but nothing appreciable. Okay, that's that. So the next stabilizer in the series is this generic looking piece of equipment. It looks like scaffolding. As you can see, there are holes all the way through. There's no brand name on it, so it must be some kind of generic stabilizer. It's got good rubberized handles, so you've got a good grip, and the handle on the back, which isn't really a handle, it's just a support, is quite comfortable on the back there. I guess after a while that would start to grate. All the damping again is done by my body, so it's my knees, my hips. It's very good side to side because it feels nice and solid in the hands, and if I push my hands forward a bit, it stays nice and firm as I go around. I can keep it solid. Up and down, same thing again, and if I'm moving along, it's my body or nothing as far as stabilizing is concerned. It's not really a stabilizer. It just moves my hands away from the camera somewhat and allows me to hold it firmly, sort of stiffly against my body. It's great for going up and down because I can just, it's almost my line of sight as I go up and down. But if I point downwards, I'm looking at an angle. I'm not looking like a true mouse's eye view. I'm looking at an angle. So that may be good, it may not be. If I do crouch down, that's fine, but I've got a limit of about 2.5 feet from the ground before that angle starts to change, which may or may not be what the film crew wants. So that's the generic support scaffolding like stabilizer, and that's that. We've got the sort of one that looks vaguely like scaffolding. I'm holding it at my back and my two hands are holding it steady. As I walk along, it's fairly steady, completely dependent on how firmly I hold it. I'm not really using my knees to dampen, so with any stabilization, it's just coming from my general body. If I soften my knees a little, I don't know if it's that much better, to be honest, but anyway, I soften my knees. Now again, the advantage is I can go down, but of course I'm not actually going down, I'm just changing the angle. So I'm not getting like a dog's eye view. If I go down my knees, I can get sort of parallel. But even then, there's a limit to how low I can get. So again, my knees are doing the stabilizing. Okay.